Welcome back to another C# scripting tutorial. I'm Reedster with Far Gaming, and in this video we'll be covering the three trigger methods in Unity: OnTriggerEnter, OnTriggerStay, and OnTriggerExit. These methods allow certain bits of code to run when the boundaries of two objects are overlapping, such as a player entering a healing bubble or detecting when enemies are close enough to initiate a melee or ranged attack. And these methods really start making your game feel alive and interactive. So let's jump in and see how they work. So first off, I'm going to show you the scene that I'm going to be working with. I have a player and a healing area, and our goal is going to be that when the player moves inside the healing area, that they're going to change color and their health is going to start going up. And then whenever they move out of it, their health is going to stop going up and they're going to change back to their normal color. On the player, you'll see I have a player movement script to move them around the scene. I have a player health script that's going to control their health. They start out with a health of 1, and then here's the two different spots where I'm going to put the colors of when the player is being healed and their normal player color so that I can change that in the script. Scrolling down, we have a capsule collider and a rigid body. Since the movement script that I'm using on the player, I don't really need gravity. I've turned off gravity and I've turned on the is kinematic. And then for our healing area, we also just have a box collider on it, and this one has the is trigger checkbox selected. So for the trigger methods to actually work, the two things that you're going to have colliding with each other both need to have some sort of collider on them to set a boundary of what its limits are and when you're going to say that they are overlapping and they're colliding. And then it doesn't matter which object has the is trigger box selected, but on my player, I don't have that one selected. On the healing area, I do. So this is going to work fine. But at least one of those needs to have that selected. And then also for the trigger methods to work properly, one of your two objects needs to have a rigid body attached to it. So if your player is the one that's going to actually be colliding with a bunch of stuff and setting off these triggers, then it makes sense to just put one rigid body on your player, and then you don't need to put it on all the different things in your scene that your player is going to be bumping into. Also, a rigid body is probably going to come in handy for many other things on your player anyways, so it just makes sense to set it up this way. One last thing I'll mention is the healing area. I have actually set to a tag called healing area. That'll come in handy in just a second. But now we're ready to take a look at our script. In the script, I only have three public variables. I have a float for the player's health, and then I have the two materials, which are the player being healed color and the normal player color, so that we can change that whenever they go into the healing area and when they come out. So our first method is going to be OnTriggerEnter. And the very moment that the player starts to intersect with any other collider in the scene is when this method is going to launch off. As long as all those conditions that I just mentioned are met, such as one of the collider has the is trigger box selected, one of them has a rigid body, and both of them have some sort of collider. So since this is attached to the player, then as soon as the player starts to collide with any other object, this is going to be ran, and the collider of the other object is going to be passed in as an argument. So we declare right here that we're passing in a collider, and we give it the name other. Now, the next thing I want to do is find out what my player is colliding with. So I'm going to check if the tag attached to that other collider is called healing area. And if so, then run this code that's in here. This is awesome for making it very dynamic depending on what your player is colliding with. Say they collide with the boundary of an enemy that has a ranged attack, then maybe if the other dot tag equals enemy, something else happens. The enemy can start targeting the player and shooting at them, or maybe your player turns towards the enemy, something else. But in this case, since it's the healing area that I'm looking for, if that is true, then I'm going to say I want to get the render component of my player and change the material to the player being healed material. So to test this out, we'll go back to our game and hit play. And you'll see I can move the player around, nothing's happening, but the moment they enter this box, their color is going to change. But currently we don't have any functionality for whenever they leave that box. and I'll show it one more time. Move them, and the moment they start to collide with this box is when that color changes. So going back to our script, the next one I'm going to show you is the OnTriggerExit. So I'm going to uncomment that. And this one runs whenever the player leaves the other collider. They stop colliding, it leaves that boundary, it's no longer intersecting with it. I still want to double check if the tag of the other collider matches the healing area, because you could have situations where your player is overlapping with a bunch of different colliders at the same time, and so you want to make sure that it's specifically leaving the healing area. And then if so, we want to get the component renderer and change the material back to the normal player color. I'm going to save this script. And then whenever we go back and hit play, now I can move the player inside the box and move them out. As soon as they leave the box, they change color back to their normal color. The last method I'm going to go over is OnTriggerStay. So I'll uncomment that. And this one, as long as the player is colliding with the other collider, this is going to run once per frame. So once again, I'm going to check if the other collider that it's staying inside of is the healing area. And if so, then I'm going to increase the player health using the plus equals 0.01, and that's a float number. So I'm increasing it by that much every single frame, or as long as the player is inside of the healing area. So I can save that, and we'll go back to our game and hit play. And you'll see over here on the right side is where our player health is. It's starting at 1, and as soon as they move inside there, it starts increasing. So the more frames per second you're getting, the faster that's going to go up, which will kind of create a bit of inconsistency between platforms. Depending on how good of a computer someone has, their player's going to heal faster than someone else's. Not exactly what you want. So what we could do is come in here and multiply that by time delta time, and that'll make it consistent because you're multiplying it by how many seconds have passed since the last frame, so it evens it out. Everyone's going to get the same experience despite their FPS. So I can go back and hit play one more time, have the player go in there, and you can see their health start going up. And then as soon as they leave, they're no longer staying inside that other collider. It's no longer increasing. Their color changes, and then it'll change back. Their health only goes up as long as they're inside the healing area specifically. Once again, that's all for this tutorial. If you don't mind, take a second and collide your mouse cursor with those like and subscribe buttons to trigger YouTube into keeping you up to date on my latest videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.